Hello and welcome. I'm Karen Bigman, the Divorcierge. Today I'm going to tell you 10 things that you should know about divorce. The first few are regarding the divorce process. Divorce takes longer than you think it will. No matter what your intentions are, unless you and your spouse do everything on the kitchen table and file the papers yourself, the process is slow. From collecting the information, to finding the professionals, to scheduling the professionals. If the courts get involved, it can take a lot of time. Expect your divorce at a minimum to take a year. Now, that's not a guarantee one way or another, but typically what I see is around 2 years for a divorce process that is not highly litigated and that doesn't end up in trial. It doesn't have to cost all your savings, but it can. If your divorce takes a really long time, if you and your spouse are digging your heels in, or one of you is digging their heels in, and you put up a fight, and you each hire attorneys, and you go to court, and you end up negotiating round and round for a long time and possibly going to trial, it's possible that you will use up all your money. If, on the other hand, you're reasonable and rational and you're able to negotiate either through mediation or negotiated but in a civilized way, then it doesn't have to cost that much. Your attorney is the most expensive piece of your divorce. If you can reduce the number of hours, the number of emails, the number of phone calls you have with your attorney, you can reduce the cost of your divorce. You can't start the divorce process with a trial. Unfortunately, you need to start at the beginning with filing and hiring attorneys and going back and forth and negotiating, and the court will do everything they can to try to get you to settle without going to trial. Trial is a last resort. So you can't, unfortunately, even if you know your spouse is going to force you to go to trial, you cannot start with a trial. You have to go through all the preliminary processes that get you there. Judges make decisions that are legally binding. If the judge makes a decision because your spouse and yourself were unable to negotiate a settlement, you will have to, and your spouse will have to, abide by what the judge says. Keep that in mind when you go to trial. The best thing you can do is settle before trial, because a judge will be making your financial decisions, your final financial decisions, as well as any decisions regarding your children that you and your spouse were not able to agree on. The kids will be scarred for life. The kids do not have to be scarred for life. Kids suffer more from the process of divorce than from the divorce itself. If you and your spouse are fighting all the time in front of them, if you're pitting one against the other, if you're putting the kids in the middle, if you're bad-mouthing each other, those are things that will affect your children and will scar them. If, on the other hand, you're offering them as much love and support as is possible through the process, they will be okay. They're likely to have some reactions to the change, but they will be okay. Regarding your children, courts no longer favor the mother necessarily. Now, if you're a stay-at-home mom and your husband works long hours and travels, chances are that you will have primary care of the children, but it is not guaranteed. Courts really want both parents to be involved in the upbringing of the children, unless, of course, there are issues such as addiction or alcoholism, mental health issue that can be proven. So understand going in that your spouse will have time with the children and that the children are children of both of you, and you are going to have to co-parent even if he or she is impossible to deal with. What you think you're entitled to and what you get may not be the same thing. you need to do the math. You need to understand what you're spending. You need to understand what's coming in. You need to understand what your long-term post-divorce budget will look like, and you need to negotiate for that, being realistic. If there's only $100 to split, you're not going to get all of it. So keep that in mind, be realistic, and figure out the math. If you're afraid of it, get someone like myself to help educate you so that you will understand what your life is going to be like financially post-divorce. The affair that ended the marriage will entitle you to more in support. Unfortunately, while affairs are devastating to you, they are not anything that will give the courts reason to pay more to you. If your spouse has been spending money on their Mr. or Mistress, then there's a possibility of recouping some of that if you can prove it. Other than that, the only thing that an affair does, unfortunately, is cause an enormous amount of anger and sadness in the relationship. And the more of that you have, the more difficult the process of divorce is. I strongly recommend that if you are in a situation of infidelity, that you go and get some therapy and help yourself through this so that you can come out the other side and that you can be reasonable and rational as you're negotiating. You will be in charge of your finances when the divorce is over. You may have been burying your head in the sand while you were married, but now that it's over, it's your turn to take care of it. So make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. Make sure you understand every penny that you're getting and not getting from this divorce, what is going to be coming out of your pocket that you have not thought about. Make sure you try to imagine every possible expense for your family that you can within reason so that you are covered and that you know what to expect post-divorce.